Okay. Exactly 6 houses east of my boyhood home in North Texas were the old railroad tracks. Beyond the railroad tracks was a wilderness waiting to be explored. There were old glass telegraph insulators, railroad spikes, crawfish in the streams, and 2 dams that provided pretty good fishing and swimming holes. I usually took my little brother Michael with me on my adventures into the wilderness because I didn't want Mother to know where I had been. Mother did not approve of our forays into the wilderness. She told us frightening stories of vagrants who ate rabbits and children under the railroad trestle. One fine spring morning, much like today, we went outside and noticed an incredible and unusual sight. There was an enormous flock of blackbirds hovering over the forest. They actually darkened the sky. There were so many of these birds. They would rush up into the air and swoop back down in the undergrowth and do this over and over. The noise was incredible. This many birds squawking and chattering at once sounded like an enormous cocktail party or political rally was occurring right there in the woods. We had to go see what was going on. As we got closer, we saw something that frightened us though. These birds were taking the forest creatures, the possums, the raccoons, the squirrels. They would grab them in their clutches and take them up into the air, hundreds of feet, and then taking a cue from their crustacean-crushing cousins, the seagull, they would drop the critters to their death and devour the carcasses. We wanted no part of being devoured like those creatures, so we decided to steer clear until the birds were gone. After lunch, the birds had moved on. We went straight back to where the birds had been. We wanted to see what was going on. We opened into a clearing of young saplings and could not believe our eyes. Everything had been stripped from the forest. Every leaf, every berry, every creature had been devoured, and all that was left was branches and skeletons of creatures littering the ground. They did leave behind one other thing, though, that was very noticeable. Tons and tons of white bird droppings. It was like a fresh snowfall. They covered every tree and branch, weighed down the limbs on the larger trees. We were amazed. We lived in Texas. We didn't see snow very often, especially not in the springtime. So we decided right then and there to build a snowman to mark the occasion. Well, after building a snowman out of bird droppings, we had to go wash up in the creek. As we were washing up in the creek, we noticed someone had been cultivating the ground down there along the creek bed. I just figured the vagrants had gotten tired of eating rabbits and children and decided to try their hand at gardening. I've never seen plants like this in my garden, but I figured it had to be some kind of vegetable. Well, the next day Michael and I were walking down the railroad tracks like tightrope walkers, arguing whether you could hear a train coming by placing your ear on the rail and listening. I had to patiently explain to Michael how the steel in those rails conducts sound much better than the air in between his ears. We decided the only way to put the argument to rest would be to experiment and try it. We knew the train would be coming along shortly, so I knelt down next to the track, put my ear on that rail, and I listened. And I listened very carefully. I didn't hear anything. All I heard was my heart beating. I could hear myself breathing. And then I heard a faint metallic clicking. And as I was trying to figure out how far away that train might be, I noticed my little brother yelling and waving his arms behind me. Leave it up to him to ruin a good science experiment. I looked up just in time to see the train coming at me at 60 miles an hour. I pulled my head back, but the wheels grazed the top of my head. And that's why I'm bald to this day. Later in the summer, when everything was dry and parched, we decided it might be a good time to go play with matches. And why not? We were down by the creek, throwing matches around, and wouldn't you know it, but we started a fire, and it spread quickly. And we were terrified. We didn't want to be held responsible for a large forest fire. So we hid back in the undergrowth to see how things would play out. Pretty soon the neighbors called the fire department. They came through the undergrowth with their hoses, their picks and shovels, and they were fighting the fire, making a valiant effort. But we couldn't see what was going on all the time because of the smoke. It was very dense and thick. And suddenly the flames hit the vagrant garden, and a great column of black smoke went up and obscured our views of the firefighters for some time. When the smoke cleared briefly, we noticed the firefighters weren't working anymore. They were rolling around on the ground and laughing. We couldn't figure out what in the world was going on. Then the wind shifted and blew that plume of smoke towards us, and we caught a whiff of that fragrant smoke. And pretty soon we were laughing and rolling on the ground, and I wanted a bag of Cheetos real bad. Michael had eaten all our snacks. We've never had as good a time before or since in that summer of '89. Thank you.
Very good.